And now the next paper is by Ioanna Koukounis, who is an archaeologist specialized in the medieval Eastern Mediterranean. She's a graduate of the University of Birmingham Center for Byzantine, Ottoman and Modern Greek Studies. And her paper is, the title of her paper is Through the Eyes of a Levantine, Hieronymo Giustiniani's manuscript of Genoese Chios. She will present a 16th century manuscript entitled History and Description of the Island of Chios by Hieronymo Giustiniani, which is an authentic testimony of a Levantine recounting of the context and the making of the Levantine society in the 16th century.
Before I start my speech, I would like to dedicate this paper to a noble Levantine that passed away, to the memory of a noble Levantine that passed away 3 years ago, Alex Baltazzi, who had hosted the second Levantine Symposium in Izmir, Smyrna, back in 2014. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm carrying the continuation of the arguments of Jerome. Because of its tragic wiping out in the first quarter of the 20th century, Smyrna has been identified with Levantinism. However, this is not correct. Let us shift the attention to the west of Smyrna, the island of Chios, birthplace and cradle of the cultural phenomenon dubbed Levantinism, or Levantine culture. Gentlemen, could you please help me with the PowerPoint? Is it? Right, okay, thank you. For those of you who are not familiar with the history of Chios Island, please allow me a brief summary of the historical events during the late Byzantine period. First of all, roughly everything begins in the late Byzantine period, in 1204 with the Fourth Crusade and the Franks that captured Constantinople and established the Latin Kingdom of Constantinople. So it's the time when the Francocratia in the Greek territories begin. The Francocratia lasted until the 1216 one, when the Emperor of Nicaea, Michael VIII Palaeologos, recaptured Constantinople with the aid of his Genoese allies that provided him the marine, because Byzantium had destroyed its navy a long time ago. As a reward, the Genoese take precious commercial privileges by Michael Palaeologos and establish themselves in the Levant. In every post of the Byzantine Empire they would wish to trade, and they traded freely. And they had all sorts of privileges one could imagine. In 1304, we have the Genoese admiral, entrepreneur, ship owner, and megas dux, that is great admiral of the Byzantine navy, Benedetto Zaccaria, who becomes the first lord of Chios. And he is credited with the flourishing of the island that was to last for centuries. This is the first Genoese period in Chios and lasts until 1329, when we have a brief Byzantine reoccupation, because the Byzantine emperor smelled the riches. In 1346 begins the second Genoese period in Chios, with a naval battle between a Genoese fleet under the Admiral Simone Vignoso and ship owners, Genoese merchants and ship owners, that provided him the galleys. This second Genoese period in Chios lasts more than 2 centuries, and it's the time that was left in, that is known as the period of the Maona of the Giustiniani. In 1566, the Ottomans captured Chios, and the Ottoman period begins and lasts until the early 20th century. Chios is annexed to Greece only in 1912, during the Balkan Wars. So, at the time of the beginning of capitalism, when the 2 maritime republics of Venice and Genoa were consolidating their supremacy in the Mediterranean, the potential of Chios as a commercial base and port of call, serving the interests of the 2 powers in the Black Sea and the Levantine markets, arose. The island's strategic geographical position, let us go back to the map. The island's strategic geographical position at the junction of the main trade routes to the Mediterranean and the Black Sea and the West, and its proximity to the coast of Asia Minor, made her the most sought-after maritime center in the Levant. In the 14th century, when the Genoese allies of the Byzantine Emperor gained foothold on this island, the Chios Golden Age was arising. For the centuries to follow, Chios would bring long-term benefits for the Genoese mercantile interests woven around a gigantic maritime network. She would get a substantial share of these benefits outside. The island became not only the center of regional and inter-regional trade, it was also starring in the arena of international maritime trade. This development was fundamental, for it resulted in a long-lasting economic flourishing, which would last until the 19th century and would impact also the island society. Within a course of nearly 3 centuries, under the banners of St. George, successive waves of Italians and other Westerners settled permanently or temporarily on the island for business opportunities. Within a course of centuries, under the leadership of capable Genoese noble entrepreneurs, the renowned Maona of the Giustiniani, Chios became the first port of the world and the cradle of cross-cultural encounters, interaction, and cross-fertilization between the East and the West. Here in the slide, you see the coat of arms of the Giustinianis, which became the trademark of their mercantile company dubbed Maona. One of the most outstanding aspects of the Chios history is certainly her society, dubbed by modern historians Chios Genoese, that is Levantine, to denote precisely this interaction and cross-fertilization of the local population with the Genoese merchant overlords. The author of the manuscript I am about to present was a very important person in his era, scion of Vincenzo Giustiniani, the last Genoese podesta or governor of Chios. Hieronymo's family survived the capture of Chios by the Ottomans in 1566, whence Hieronymo fled to Paris, living thereafter in the court of the King of France, Charles IX, as His Majesty's Counselor and Ambassador. As the author informs us, His history was redacted in Paris in 1586. That is, only 20 years after the capture of Chios by the Ottomans, during the High Renaissance period in Europe, constituting the earliest post-Byzantine monograph of the regional history of any part of Greece. In reality, there are 5 manuscripts entitled History and Description of the Island of Chio or Chios, all of them original. The first is a possession of the British school at Athens. The second is in the Bibliothèque Nationale de France in Paris. There is a third copy, original, in the Library Civica Berio in Genoa. A fourth version, is in the State Archives of Rome. The fifth copy, unknown up to now, it's the piece you see on the left-hand side, is in the possession of a private collector in Greece. There is also an early 17th century book with a history of Chios translated in French. The 3 manuscripts of the British school at Athens, the Bibliothèque Nationale de France and the Berianus in Genoa, are short versions of the history consisting of 10 chapters. The manuscript, here we see the piece in the National Library in Paris. And here is the manuscript in the State Archives of Rome. The manuscript is a unique primary source giving fundamental information on the lordships and the context of the Levant, emphasizing the socio-political and administrative history of Genoese Chios through the eyes of an official person, member of the ruling elite of the commercial company Ioanna of the Giustiniani, which, as I mentioned, administered Chios for more than 2 centuries. In addition, the history highlights the architecture and topography of the port and the fortified town. I'm sorry, forgot to show it to you. This is the manuscript in the private collection. In addition, the history highlights the architecture and topography of the port and the fortified town, the headquarters of the ruling class, the strong defenses of the fortified town, the Roman Catholic and the Orthodox churches, the beauty and luxurious decoration of the former. Also, economic patterns, social aspects such as demography, the religious minorities of the island, Roman Catholics and Jews, interaction with the local population, their internal relations, and by and large, facets of everyday life among culturally diverse people, irrespective of race or religion. Additionally, traditions in common, beliefs, superstitions, shedding light to the life of a cosmopolitan and multicultural society of the most vibrant commercial place, as well as most stable Christian land of the Levant during the period of its golden age. Conclusion, heritage, identities and heritage. Nearly 350 years after the redaction of Hieronymo's history, in 1918, the scholar Dimitrios P. Petropokino, and we are very proud to have his grandson, great-grandson here in our audience, descendant of one of the noblest families of Chios, commissioned Pavlos Zerlendis, historian and researcher of Chios origin, to conduct research as to the whereabouts of the Hieronymus manuscript, or at least one version of it. The manuscript of the British school at Athens was the fruit of this research, as we read in the postcard. This is the B-side, the other side of the postcard, written and explained by Pavlos Zerlendis, explaining to his commissioner, to Dimitri Petrogotimo, what he found in Genoa and what his initial preliminary results regarding the manuscript are. In 1934, another Chios scholar and renowned historian of Chios, Philip Pandeli Argenti, descendant of a Chios Levantine, Chios Genoese noble family, conducts research on the Giustiniani manuscript, aiming to locate the original version, as he claims, and publish it. Argenti was aware of the British School at Athens manuscript and the Paris piece. However, he was convinced that both pieces were copies of the original manuscript, as he claims. Eventually, he located what he had dubbed original version of Hieronymo's history in the State Archives of Rome, in the Fondo Giustiniani. However, precisely 100 years later, in the early 21st century, another manuscript appears, acquired at an auction by a Chios collector in Athens who commissioned a Chios scholar to study it. The Roman and Athenian manuscripts represent the long version of the history, consisting of 13 chapters. Their resemblance is striking. The most obvious trait is the binding. Both are leather-bound with cream-white cover. The folios have the same dimensions. Preliminary research shows that the former was the draft version of the latter. Our manuscript consists of 284 unnumbered folios, each one bearing a watermark. The manuscript is the earliest surviving post-Byzantine literary primary source of a Greek region. The study renders possible to illuminate those mechanisms that brought about the emergence of the Levantine society, a phenomenon that was born and developed on Chios in the eve of the 14th century, as Jerome pointed out, namely long before its association with Smyrna. In the course of centuries, the multicultural Levantines were bearers of ecumenical values such as cosmopolitan mentality, tolerance, coexistence, and mutual understanding among people of diverse cultural, racial, and religious background, namely ideals stupendously impacting our days. The manuscript, additionally, is the authentic testimony of a Levantine, recounting the context of the making of the Levantine society, its description and characteristics, the ambience within which those people lived and interacted, their lifestyle, and other facets of their life. His lively and vivid account, despite his deliberate long digressions, illustrates the feature of the Levantine identity, an elite society which stands out by virtue of its culture. They were Westerners that settled down in the Levant, setting up business associations as well as forging family bonds with the locals. It was their education, multilingualism, broad-mindedness, behavior, manners and customs that made the Levantines a special culture unanimously celebrated by travelers, foreign diplomats, entrepreneurs, intellectuals, and so on. Thank you.